So today's lesson is lesson 6.3. We're going to write, solve, and graph compound inequalities. We're going to model real-life situations using compound inequalities. So basically what a compound inequality is, it consists of two inequalities connected by the words either an and or an or. That connects our two compound inequalities together. Today, specifically, what we're going to talk about is a compound inequality with the word and. So the solutions of an and compound inequality describe all of the possible solutions that make both of the inequality statements true. So to write an inequality that represents this statement, x is less than 4 and greater than or equal to 0. So if I write the inequality statement, first thing I do is pick out my numbers. I have 4 and I have 0. Write the 0 on the left, write the 4 on the right. And this is the way we fill it in. We would say 0 is less, okay, it says greater than or equal to 0. So I'm going to use less than or equal to here. And x is less than 4, so I'm just going to use x is less than here. And then in the middle, that's where my variable is going to go, and I put x. So x is less than 4, I'm saying x is less than 4, and it's greater than or equal to 0. If I notice, if I flip this around, this would be the same as saying x is greater than or equal to 0, right? So this part of my inequality is here, and less than 4, that would be this part here. So that's why we call it a compound inequality. It actually has two parts to it. And we're saying that x is somewhere in between these two numbers, 0 and 4. So here we want to sketch the graph of the inequality. And we would read this as -2 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 5. So the easiest way to do this, notice we have less than or equal to on both of these. So that tells me that I want to have a closed dot. So I'm going to put a closed dot above the -2, or on the -2, I should say, right here. And then I'm going to put a closed dot at the -5, or at the 5, sorry, not -5. So that would be right here. And then all I do simply is shade in between the two numbers. So I'm going to shade there, and that's the graph of that inequality. I'm talking about -2 and 5 and all the numbers in between there. That's what that compound inequality statement means. We're going to write the compound inequality to describe this graph. So we're just going backwards from what we just did before. So again, if I look at my two endpoints here and here, I'm just going to write those numbers down. So I'm going to write down -3 right here, and I'm going to write down my other endpoint over here. So I've written down my two endpoints, and of course x is going to be in the middle. So there's my x. Now the big question is, what inequality symbols do I use? First of all, an open dot, that tells me that I don't want to include equal to. So all I'm going to do is put -3 is going to be less than x. And then on the right-hand side, I notice that I have a closed dot. So on the right-hand side, I'm going to say less than or equal to. And then that's my inequality statement. -3 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 1. So now we want to solve the inequality and graph the solution. Okay, what this is, it becomes two inequality problems in one here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line coming down this way, and I'm going to draw a line coming down this way. through my inequalities. Now, what would I do? I would solve both sides at one time. And the first thing I would do is I would subtract 9 to get x by itself. So that means I'm going to subtract 9 over here on this side of the line. And on the left, I'm going to subtract 9 as well. So that's going to give me negative 9 over here. I'm going to bring down my inequality symbol of less than or equal to. I'm going to have my x in the middle because my 9s are going to cancel each other out. And then 17 minus, or I'm sorry, bring down this inequality symbol. That's going to be less than there. And then 17 minus 9 is going to be 8. So my inequality statement is going to be negative 9 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or 8. I'm going to bring up my number line, and I want to graph that now. Start out with my endpoints. So over here, I'm going to graph negative 9, and I'm going to use a closed dot because of this symbol right here. So I'm going to use a closed dot for my endpoint over here. And then on the right-hand side, I'm going to use an open dot at 8. So I can have two different symbols. I can have an open dot and a closed dot. It doesn't matter. It depends all on what my inequality signs are here and here. And then I need to shade in the middle. So I'm going to shade from my negative 9 all the way over to my 8. And that finishes that problem. Here's a little different inequality to take a look at. So we want to solve this inequality and graph the solution as well. So again, start out with my lines, going through the inequality symbol on both sides. And then to start solving this, I'm going to add 6 all the way across. So if I add 6 there, that's going to give me negative 5 plus 6 is 1. Our 6's are going to cancel out here, leave me with a negative x. And then 3 plus 6 is 9. Now what I can't forget to do is bring down my inequality symbols of less than and less than. And I still don't have x by itself because of this little negative sign here. So what I need to do now is I need to divide by negative 1. So I'm going to divide this by negative 1. I'm going to divide over here by negative 1. And on the right side, I'm going to divide by negative 1. So this is going to leave me with negative 1 on my left. It's going to leave me with x in the middle. And it's going to leave me with negative 9 on the right. But I still have to bring down my inequality symbols. But since I divided by a negative number, I have to flip them over. So I'm going to put greater than here, and I'm going to put greater than there. Okay. Now, we want to rewrite our inequality with the smallest number on the left-hand side. So I got to flip this whole thing over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this, and I'm going to say negative 9. I'm going to flip both of my inequality symbols as well. So I'm going to say negative 9 is less than x, and x is less than negative 1. Now I've got my smaller number over here. I've got my bigger number of negative 1 over on the right-hand side, and both my symbols are less than. So to graph that, I'm going to bring up my number line here. So to graph that, I'm going to put an open dot at negative 9. I'm going to put an open dot at negative 1. And I'm going to shade everything in the middle. And there's my solution. So remember, two things. One, decimals always have a point. And then next, what did Miss Manners say to the inequality symbol? It's not polite to point.